All right, strap on your seatbelts. It is time for the MedTech experts. So happy to be here today with our distinguished panel and good friends. We have Mr. Skender Daerti, Mr. Tom Hickey, and Mr. Scott Alexander. Howdy, fellas.
Right.
Hey, Mike.
Hi, Mike.
So, since I got you guys, I was thinking we should share and get inside your brain. And we should take a look at the things that you're seeing with your clients, with companies that are succeeding, that are making them successful. The things specifically that they're doing that are working, getting results, and are blazing a trail forward for their companies, as opposed to the ones that are not performing, lackluster, and need some help. So, Scott, in your area, tell me what's going on, what's working, and what are people doing?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, Mike. I think the things that are working for the really successful companies are not unique, they're just uncommon. And the number one thing that I see that is the differentiator between companies whose marketing is working really well and those that aren't is that they're consistent. So, we've all been in organizations where you've got marketing going, whatever. It looks like the quarter's going to be soft, and so like marketing budgets get cut, like travel gets cut, all these kinds of things get cut, and then what we see is that ends up putting you into a downward spiral because you're starting and stopping something that by its definition is requires long periods of time. Think about marketing like it's education, and so the companies that do well think about education as an ongoing training of your prospects. And so it's not that any one day or any one activity is revolutionary. It's really just a compound effect of having all these things building up over days, weeks, months, years, and then all of a sudden they become overnight successes. So to me, like that's the number one thing is just the consistency and the commitment to doing the necessary things to be able to get to where you want to go.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Tom, what about you?
This is an interesting topic because I talk to a lot of providers, I talk to a lot of innovators, and I think a lot of this comes down to workflow, right? I think clinicians don't really adopt a technology because it's cool or impressive. They really adopt it because it makes some of the hard things in their day easier, or it helps them eliminate some steps in their day. So um, I see that companies, that are gaining traction are saying our technology is better. They're showing how they remove friction from the clinician's day. Because there's nothing worse when you introduce a new technology and you go, hey, this is going to be great, but you just have to do this one thing followed by this, and then you'll get the result. Well, to try to train a provider or a group of providers or clinicians that one or two extra steps, now you're talking about really changing how they go about what they do, how they organize their day. So if you as an innovator or a company can make things seamless or save them steps and make that workflow process easier for them, the opportunities are much greater and the chances for success go up geometrically, in my opinion.
And
I
Skender,
think
let's go to you.
Wait, Scott, you wanted to comment on Tom's thing?
Yeah, I was just going to comment on that. Like, I think to do that, I agree with everything you're saying, Tom. I think to do that, you need to understand the workflow and you need to understand like how are you impacting something that's going on, which is a critical step in this. The companies that do it well know what they're solving for.
Yeah, and you know what? That's really important, Scott. And thanks for mentioning that because to get to that point, you can't develop your product technology or system in a vacuum. You can't
Mhm.
do that at the bench. You have to immerse yourself into that clinical workflow, right? You've got
Mhm.
to get that feedback, which sometimes can be scary, right? Because it might be, wow, this doesn't really work at all, right? But you need that feedback as you go through that development process because that's where you're going to get some of those little nuanced events that can really separate your technology from the pack. And I think that immersion is key to this.
The other thing is, I think the leadership community is equally focused on operational dynamics and operational workflow today, probably more than ever. And it's because of the fact that they're the ones that are having to deal with the no-show
Mhm.
staff members, right? They're the ones that after a really, and we talked to a CNO recently who's like, any day that I know that there is just everything's gone haywire, the next day I'm having 3 people call out,
Mhm.
right? And so anytime I'm looking at a new technology that, okay, it can increase efficacy by 4%, 6%, and do this, but if it's going to add to 3 more steps, I'm telling people we can't do it.
Yeah, I'm seeing that hospitals and medical practices really are, to your point, Skender, are buying operational relief, right? If I can
Mhm.
coin that phrase, right?
Yeah.
As much as they're buying the innovation, what they're really looking for is that operational relief. How can I reduce the number of balls I'm juggling every day to then focus on the patient care and the outcomes that I'm really trying to drive towards?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I'm seeing a stronger push to how can you make me money, not just save me money? And then how can you save me time? Right?
Yeah.
Where I think the old vector was very much iterative change. Hey, I'll save you 6% off of whatever you were using yesterday. I don't feel like that's flying in today's world. I think they're like, it's not worth this 6% to have to go through a whole conversion process. And how about if it does,
Mhm.
even if it does do the same amount of time as the last product, just the fact that I have to learn your product is a setback.
Mhm. Mhm. Spot on.
So, Tom, what are companies doing to make that workflow process and that integration easier?
There's a lot of different aspects to that, right? It might be, if you're selling a device or a tangible product, it might be, fewer moving parts, looking at the patient flow. What is that wheels in, wheels out time, to use an operating room technology? From if you're selling software as a service, it might be, hey, it's much more intuitive, right? You're not hitting as many buttons, or you're not doing as many clicks, or you're getting that information. So it's really, in my opinion, and what I've seen and heard when I talk to innovators, is it's that design element has to be a result of immersion with your customer, right? To really live and breathe what their day looks like and understand where those friction points are, and trying to reduce those friction points or eliminate them.
Excellent. So, Scott, I kind of cut you off a little bit. I think I did too much caffeine today. We talked about marketing and the consistency of it. I think we need to dig in there a little bit.
Yeah.
So, can you just elaborate on, talk about a little bit about what you were there, and then we'll get everybody to comment.
Yeah. So, at the end of the day, it comes down to the fact that marketing is all about your educate. Like, there's kind of two things you're doing. One is like you're trying to educate the market about two things. Number one, they've got a problem that needs to be solved. And then two, you've got the solution to their problem. And, these things, the reason why we all know what Coca-Cola is because we've seen it so many times in our lives. And so, as we think about companies that are doing marketing really well, they're taking a long-term view on how they're helping to build up awareness around this issue they can solve for, right? And back to what Tom was saying, like maybe it's an operational thing that they're talking about, and it's not just a one and done where they say the company says it one time and they move on. It's like, what's the thing? How are they going to make it really obvious to the prospects in the marketplace that this problem, whatever it is they have, is a real problem that needs to be solved for? And it's sort of this sort of persistence in helping to shape the mentality of the prospects that yields these massive improvements and growth in the business. So they're doing that, and it's not just a one and done kind of a thing. And the other thing that they're not doing is they're not turning it on, turning it off, turning it on, turning it off, because this stuff just takes time. Like, if you think about how many ads any one of us have seen in the past week, it's a trillion. I mean, we see so many things. But the ones that you remember are the ones that you tend to see over and over and over again. And so again, this sort of like consistency piece and the long-term horizon is what we tend to see, especially when the campaigns and the work that they're doing are tied to real issues that are plaguing the prospects, much like Tom was describing in his talk.
So Scott, is this like better storytelling? Is that part of it?
Yeah,
How do we get that drawn out so people are paying attention to it?
yeah. I mean, I think it's a great question. Yeah, better storytelling is definitely one of those things. Um, Increased frequency is another one of those things. So telling the same story, 10 times versus once. Multiple channels, and really the thing that we have seen to be transformative over the past, at least in the past 5 years, is this idea that you have a limited number of people that make up your market. And so you're not trying to build a campaign on LinkedIn and a campaign on Meta or an email campaign. What you're trying to do is you're trying to take those 30,000 cardiologists in the United States and touch each one of them individually as many times as you can via as many channels as possible to create that ecosystem of this is a problem that exists in cardiology. And then here is a solution that I should consider to solve for that problem that I have. It's that consistency and that long-term view of changing the minds of specific human beings that is the difference between sort of what marketing used to be that frankly isn't all that effective and what's been really effective today.
I mean, Scott, when you think about the new age of wellness
Mm-hmm.
and medicine today is largely placed on the idea that so many consumers are equally consumed with how do I look better
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
feel more vibrant than
Yep.
just how do I feel better, right? Because I
Yeah.
was feeling ill, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so from that context, we're seeing this crossroads emerge so much more of the direct to consumer influencer kind of
Yeah.
coming in and influencing physicians,
Yeah.
influencing medicine, right? I mean, the
Mm-hmm.
whole world, I mean, Mike, you probably knows better than all of us, but the explosive world of peptides, et cetera, right? GLP-1s, a lot of that stuff was organically driven and
Mm-hmm.
it was organically driven, not necessarily per se by like one of the major pharmas doing all this advertising. It was
Mm-hmm.
likely done by people being like, I tried a semaglutide and
Yep.
here's why it works for me, yada yada yada.
Mm-hmm.
So, Scott, that's actually happening in our space. Influencers are a part of our space.
Yeah. I mean, in specific niches, yeah. I mean, well, think about it. Like we all know the term KOLs, right? Like Marty Leon in the cardiology space, brilliant clinician, physician that he is an influencer, has been basically his whole career. And there's all kinds of folks that are like that. So yes, we're seeing that more and more. Healthcare marketing and yes, in med device is just following the rest of the world. So yeah, I mean, you're
So,
starting
so
to see
there,
that.
so there are people getting paid to post for other medical device companies.
Yeah, that's right.
Fascinating.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Is that a way of building trust, Scott? Is that part of what they're doing here?
Yeah. So what they're tending to do when they're taking an influencer strategy, which by the way, like just for the audience, this is not your first step when it comes to marketing, right? This is once you kind of have the basics down. But yeah, what they're doing is they're creating, establishing credibility by having a trusted person vet them and then talk about why they're a great option for somebody. But no, it's happening all the time right now.
Mhm.
Um,
Awesome.
yeah, it's a fascinating way that like the consumer marketing world is folding into medtech marketing.
Well, I mean, Dexcom had the first Super Bowl ad 3 years ago with Nick Jonas as its personality on it, right? That was like the
Yeah,
first time, you know?
yeah. I mean, that's certainly one of the big ones. I know a company that's in the catheter. I can't go into too much detail, but they're in the catheter space, and they have run influencer campaigns with specific types of nurses that are seen as the thought leader or like they're out there posting things on TikTok and that sort of thing. There's been partnerships that went in place there to help build up brand equity and awareness and that sort of thing. And it was fairly effective.
I believe it.
Yeah.
Very, very interesting. All right, Skender, what's the number one thing?
All right, let's play a little bit of Jeopardy here. The answer is 82%.
What is how many Mike in high school?
What?
Huh?
Huh?
I'm just kidding. I was gonna do it to Skender, but I, I felt like that might hit a little too hard. I wouldn't, you know, I was at 95%, so I can give everybody a hard time.
Anybody
82%.
else? 82%.
I know the 82% as it relates to my world, and so I don't know if this is the right answer, but it's the amount of research and sales, old sales things that you needed to do that are done now via online in terms
Yeah,
of information. You know, the all the stuff that the sales process is now 83% done online as opposed to face to face.
that's interesting. Great fact. Not the fact I was looking for, though.
82% is the amount of sales time wasted in between sales calls.
Another great fact. Absolutely not the fact I was looking for. Okay. The fact that I was looking for, and according to a study that I read yesterday, and the final numbers are probably up for some discussion, doesn't matter. It's an inversion to what was previously, and that is 82+% physicians are employed by a healthcare facility today,
Holy
right?
smokes, really?
Wow.
82%, right? Now think about it. Collectively, all of us have some gray hair. We're all missing some hair, right?
Yeah.
Let's think about when we all came into this industry in our early years. Okay. What do you think that percentage was?
18.
The inversion potentially,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I frankly don't know the exact answer, but I would say it's easily the inversion,
Yeah.
right? If not more, or if not less, right? 10%. Okay. So
We're
I
not that old,
posit,
Skender.
what's that?
We're not that old, Skender.
I posit that inversion and that trend alone is one of the greatest factors that has impacted and changed the entire medtech sales and marketing pipeline and activity altogether, right?
Mhm.
So what do I see that customers are doing well today? I see them talking to their customers and getting voice of customer earlier. I'm not even saying that as a sales tactic for what we do. What I'm saying is those customers that talk to clinicians earlier in the process, because the old sales process used to be, hey, sales aren't going well. Well, you know what? Let's just throw a bunch of money and hire new sales reps and let them go out there because everything was transactional, right? You could influence, you could get more sales just by having more feet on the street, talking to more doctors. That was also quasi market research at the same time, right? The market research was in the sales report. This thing's not selling, or it is selling, therefore it works, right? That was it. In today's world, you have to be way more educated
Mhm.
early on to understand what is happening. Why? Because the physician employment model changed the way that they are reimbursed and they are compensated. And now they actually care how much things cost,
Hmm.
right? In the old
Mhm.
model that we came into the industry with, right? Randy Rep went in and it was like 4,000, 5,000, 6,000. What do you care? You're not paying the bill, right? You want to try it? Here's my study that says it works. And the old spiel was, can you think of a patient you could try this on tomorrow? Right? And that was it. And so you had some opportunity to have the person try it. Now you go to a 38-year-old physician that's probably a couple years out, and you ask them to try it tomorrow. I don't have that kind of authority, right? And
Mhm.
by the way, I've got to look at the entire process because I get compensated according to my procedural cost efficiency. So now I actually care about the cost. I posit again, that is one of the greatest influencers and changes to the entire medtech model. And I still don't think that many companies, because we just talked to one yesterday who raised $7 million, and they're like, you know what we're going to do? We're going to figure out our market research by hiring sales reps. And I'm like, that's your investors talking. Your investors are saying, take this money and go out there. But if you don't talk to the customers first and you find out it's an 18-month sales cycle,
Mhm.
what have you done? You've got 18 months of cash burn. That's all you got. I left you
Yeah.
guys speechless. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Skender
No,
for the win.
I'm just thinking about how does that change the messaging for customers?
Mhm.
Mhm.
I think it changes it from the perspective of if you don't do your homework first. And when you say customers, you're talking about medtech clients speaking to their customers.
Correct. Like how right?
Yeah.
How do they package their message differently now?
I think the idea today is, and we've talked about this before, and Tom touched upon this, right? It's that whole you have to go in with a full CFO paradigm,
Mhm.
totally connected together, right? You can't just come in with the C, which is what they used to do. Here's my study. Would you try this on a patient tomorrow? Right?
CFO being clinical, financial, and operational,
Clinical,
right?
financial,
Right.
operational. Correct. Thank you, Scott.
Not chief financial officer. Yeah.
Right, right. So the idea now that that same rep has to go and talk to the doctor not only about the great study that they did, but talk to them about the financial and economic implication as well as the operational component that Tom was talking about, right? Back in the day, it was like if you had a study, you just went in there and said, "Hey, can you think of a patient tomorrow you could try this on?" Doesn't work today.
Yeah, there's so many more stakeholders, right? That I mean, yeah, you got to get that clinical buy-in, but you've got value analysis, you got supply chain, right? Maybe a GPO is in there, right? I mean, you've got all these different moving parts, right? That you've got to be able to speak to.
But even, I was talking with a very close friend of mine recently who works for one of the large orthopedic companies, right? And he was saying he pretty much still sticks to the same four surgeons. The reason why is he can't talk to any of the younger surgeons because they're like,
Mhm.
"Oh, that's really cool. That's a cool product. You know what? I think I'm going to bring it up at the next committee meeting." And and he was trained committees are bad, right? Obviously. It's
Mhm.
like, no, 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 no. How about just tomorrow you try this on somebody, trying the old rehash thing? And I can't do that.
Right.
I have to go talk to the coordinator to see if we even can buy it. And yeah, that's a change in practice that our industry still is struggling with.
Mhm.
Still, it's mind blowing to people that that changed. That started changing back in 2012,
Yes,
and COVID happened and accelerated it. But this is a trend that's been going on for getting close to 20 years. Because
82% employment, Scott,
yeah,
right?
and the reality is like it's never going back.
No, it's too much
So
risk.
yeah.
You know what? The younger kids today are like, I'm happy to be employed. 4 weeks vacation.
Mhm.
When I leave at 5 o'clock, that's somebody else's problem.
Yep.
Yeah, you pay me when I'll keep the pager for when I'm on
Mhm.
call, but when I'm not on call, I'm not taking any calls.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you're right. I think the companies that are doing well, a couple of the things, and this leads to my second point, just because it ties in. They understand that this is a long game, and you have to play in today's game, not yesterday's game. Today's game requires you to understand the clinical, financial, and operational considerations of your product. It's not just like, hey, we have a widget with a study. You have to be embedded in with folks long before you're ready to sell them something. So you have to have a relationship and sort of this kind of like ongoing thing. You have to be an entity that's known, and you have to be ready to zig and zag with them as these organizations go through their ups and downs. Like the history of being able to like just bulldog stuff through, like that's just gone. So I don't know. Do you see anybody who's actually still able to continue to bulldog stuff in?
I've not seen that in
Neither have I.
in years, right? It's
Yeah.
just, even if you get the top dog surgeon champion, right, it still has to go through the process, and some of it is good in some regards. I mean, I'm old school. I was part of the the old way of doing it, and now, I mean, there's so many other aspects to it in terms of clinical outcomes and patient safety and other
Mhm.
aspects, to know that the clinician downstream that's going to take care of that patient knows what happened and knows what was used, right? And
Mhm.
in many days, in the past, that would be a surprise, right?
Yeah.
And that's not a good situation. We can argue as the pendulum swung too far to the other direction, but in somewhere there in the middle there, there's really a good process that I think has helped but it's certainly taking longer. And you've got to be prepared, and you've got to have your whole team trained from customer service to sales to marketing to engineering that it's not going to happen overnight.
Yeah, agreed. Mike, we didn't hear your thought on an idea.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna talk about what I believe is critical, right? It's pipeline. Pipeline is oxygen to any company. And the companies that are really doing well understand that pipeline is it's architecture. It has to
Mhm.
be done right. It has to be done methodically, and it has to be engineered. And the way to do that is number one with targeting. Uh, Everybody talks about the ideal customer profile. And I can't tell you that how many companies that we work with where their only criteria is that they know that they do that therapy, or they know they use that device, or they know that that piece of capital equipment is used in the lab. And so that basically becomes their criteria for calling on the account. Buy these lists, and half the time these lists are inaccurate, and they have a field sales force going out there and trying to get that information, and it becomes a very slow boat to build pipeline. Whereas the companies that are architecting and engineering the pipeline properly, number one, are really buying information, right? The first thing you have to do is invest in data sources. And there are some great ones, which procedural information is really important because it'll tell you where the high volume players are. It'll tell you how many doctors are in a practice. It'll tell you a lot of specifics that you need in order to approach the right person that you're looking for, the right company that you're looking for. And I think that companies look at the data, the price of data, and they go, that's too expensive.
Mhm.
Whereas when you think about how much time it saves your team on wasting time, I think the biggest issue that we have is wasted time, especially for companies that are funded, that have just got funding. They think, oh, I just got this funding. Well, that funding is only going to last you a period of time. You got to start producing. So you need to
Mhm.
position the right people at the right time. So I think investing in that data is very, very important. In alignment with that in the architecture, the second thing is they don't leave pipeline up to chance. They actually put an inside sales team in place that is responsible for generating that information, generating those initial conversations that are going to tell you what they're doing and who they're doing it with and why they're doing it that way, and are they in the market, are they under a contract, and so all that valuable data. How old is the equipment that they have? All that valuable equipment uh, information is now aligned in their system so that they can map what rep should be in one account at what time. And so the architecture, the structure, and the commitment to pipeline being oxygen and really taking it serious is what I'm seeing the number one thing.
Can I challenge that? I agree. And let's say that I'm running a medical device company, and what I've heard so far, as in, my sales cycle is going to be longer. I need to have an inside sales team. I need to build up my marketing stuff, right? All these things are, from my perspective, they're added costs to the P&L. I've got investors to manage. So the money has to come from somewhere. What do you cut in today? Or I'll ask this: what are the clients that you're working with that are doing well? What have they cut in order to be able to fund these things that are helping them separate from their competitors?
So I mean, they're looking at their sales and marketing spend,
Yeah.
and if you're not seeing a direct ROI,
Mhm.
the first thing that's the easiest thing is to cut anything that's not measurable and that's not working.
Mhm.
And it really depends upon the stage of the company, Scott. I mean, if you're new
Mhm.
and you're new kid on the block, before you probably go to your first trade show,
Mhm.
right? It would be better to start understanding the people that, because you go to a trade show, you set up your booth, and you're hoping that your ideal customer walks up to you.
Yeah.
And you have no name, no presence. That's just not going to happen. So, they'd be cutting trade show budgets, or they'd be cutting some magazine ads and some old school, outdated marketing things. And, you said that it's expensive. The data's expensive and the inside sales expensive. What's expensive is having no idea who's buying your product and who's in the market. Is that knowledge? Not to know that is, to me, shareholder crime.
I'll take a little different tack on that if I could. And everything you two have said is 100% valid. But the other successful companies that I see are also immersing themselves with their investors. And they're looking for the right investor that knows their segment, right? I've talked to a lot of CEOs that have had, family offices that aren't aligned, and they're like, hey, I want an investor that understands my business and is going to be a value add, right? So the investor has to also be prepared for what this journey is going to look like. Yes, we want to make sure the resources we're investing, like a really good inside sales call, inside sales team is really spot on, but the investor has to be brought into that and be able to add a value to that, not only with just money, but maybe some other connections of their own that can help accelerate that process.
Yeah. Because I like to stir the pot sometimes, I think where you have to pull back is on your field sales force. I think where we see like the difference between the companies that are working and not working is the companies that are having good success have significantly reduced the number of reps that they have in the field, because they don't have access like they used to. They're super expensive. They don't want to be out prospecting, which is understandable, right? But that asset that we used to, like, if you think about how med device companies used to be built, this is back in like 1990, 95, whatever. It was like engineering and it was sales. And that was it. And that's not the way that it's structured today, right? Today, on the commercial side, you've got sales, you got marketing, you got, contracting with like GPOs and IDNs. You've got you got inside sales forces, you've got all this kind of stuff. It's a much more complex world. And that money has to come from somewhere. And I think the folks that tend to struggle, or the companies that are struggling, tend to be ones that want to just be able to hire more reps and have that drive the number. And we're just realizing that's not a viable strategy today.
I think the approach, Scott, is not cutting the outside sales team. It's maybe rethinking the outside sales team, right? Why hire W-2s when you can bring in 1099s, right? Think about what you're doing, or do a blended kind of sales force, right? And maybe even get some clinical support. So I think that outside touch is important to have, but you can rethink about where those cost centers are and how to do it a little differently, so you're paying on results and not just paying.
Yeah, and just to piggyback that, I would say that structurally, the companies that are doing well, Scott, understand your point exactly, and that is you don't need as many outside salespeople as you think you need. Right? Because if you have a solid inside sales force mapping the market for you and showing you who's in the market today, next week, and you literally have the roadmap, that's what we'll do, right? Now, that outside sales resource is always in front of the right place at the right time. And so you need less of them, because there's not that many in the market companies right now that need an outside presence. And outside is, to Tom's point, very, very important. But it's important that they're at the right place at the right time. And by leveraging inside sales, you need less outside salespeople. You can afford the highest quality outside salespeople and really ramp up sales there. And I have a client that we're taking on right now that how they're affording the program is they had 2 reps that they fired because after 9 months, they produced 0 sales. So they're just reallocating that budget over inside sales.
Yep. And I bet you dinner that they're going to be more successful, because they're going to have people that are young, hungry, much more efficient, not behind the dash, the windshield all the time, who are out there working opportunities, and only when they're ready, then they bring in the closer, right? That you're able to afford top dollar for. So I think that's the model that works moving forward.
Absolutely. All right. Well, this was fascinating. I enjoyed everybody's comments, and I guess let's wrap it up with some final thoughts. So, Tom, what are your final thoughts?
Well, first of all, I agree, Mike. This was really fascinating, and I learned a lot. I think what's really interesting here and what we've talked about is really what's where the winners and losers are those that can understand it's not just the technology itself, but it's the execution, communication, workflow integration, and really the ability to create and measure or create a measurable operational value. I think those are the companies that are going to succeed and probably are succeeding right now.
Scott?
I, what Tom just said, I think understanding that people don't buy widgets, right? They buy the outcome from the widgets that they buy. And so I think having a better understanding of that. I think the other piece is being able to do it in a financially responsible, P&L and like organic commercial structure, I think is really important. But yeah, I mean, agree. Like these are really interesting things that everybody's kind of bringing to the table. So I'm glad this was fun to do.
Gender?
I think the industry has always thought about when we say the word innovation, it's how do I innovate something to give to a client, right? How do I innovate a technology? How do I innovate a product? How do I innovate a service? And what we're identifying here is the companies that are most successful. Yeah, of course, they're creating innovative technologies, but they're innovating their delivery model. They're innovating the way that they connect and create outreach to customers, right? We've had the good fortune of being a high margin industry for so long that we didn't need to innovate. And we saw the likes of the consumer market and the tech market continuously evolving how they did things. And for whatever reasons, we finally have gotten to the point where the same old doesn't yield the same old results. And I think that's really one of the things that's encouraging. And I really felt good about this conversation just in that paradigm.
Mhm.
Excellent. And my parting shot is after listening to everybody and in my world, I think the companies that are really doing well really understand and have a relationship at the customer level and knowledge at the customer level. So when they present an idea or a solution, or they market to that customer, that they're marketing to that customer specifically with knowledge that they know the pain or the opportunity that that customer is experiencing. And it's not a one size fit all model anymore. You literally have to be targeted. Your messaging has to be targeted. Your approach needs to be targeted. And that will yield a lot greater result, a lot faster than just mass producing and just treating everybody the same.
Great.
And with that in mind, we are going to wrap it up today. I appreciate everybody's thoughts. Thank you, gentlemen, for your thoughts and your time. I want to thank the audience. And if you'd like, we'd love you to just share the podcast with everybody. Like, click, subscribe, do all that good stuff. We appreciate you, and we just wish you a great, great day. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
I guess.